Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Heat vs. the World podcast. As always, I'm your host, Joel Jacob, and with me always, I got some guests. First, we got Miami Flash PE. Say what's up to the people, Flash.
What's up, everybody? Follow me on Twitter, Miami Flash PE. Give me a follow. I'll follow you right back.
And then right after that, we got Mr. Jake Wild. Say what's up to the people, Jake.
Yo, what's going on, Heat Nation? This is at Wild Thoughts on Twitter. E at the end of Wild, 2 S's at the end of Thoughts.
And then right after that, we have a contributor from 5 Reasons. You can catch him sharing all kinds of horror stories on Reddit. Say what's up to the people, Mr. Brian Young.
What's up, everybody? You all should look up I Investigate Disturbing Cases. That's my latest horror series I'm working on. I just posted the third part. That is I Investigate Disturbing Cases. Check it out.
And then following him, we got our female correspondent, Miss Angelina Martel. Say what's up to the people, Angelina.
What's going on, Heat vs. the World? It's Angelina Martel. You can follow me on Twitter at Angie Martel with 2 E's for all your latest Miami Heat updates.
And then last but not least, we have a very special guest from 5 Reasons Sports as well. One of the best insiders and probably one of the best people you could see on Twitter dishing out all the Heat news. Say what's up to the Heat vs. the World audience, Mr. Greg Sylvander.
What's up? Glad to be here. Seen a lot of really good guests come across, so I'm going to be it's going to be a tough act to follow. You guys have been getting a lot of really good guests, but I'm happy to be here.
You'll fit right in, man. Don't worry.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, so without further ado, let's get started. With trade deadline coming around, it looks like there is still a few names that are out there. So Greg, I know you have all the scoop. We've been talking about it for basically every podcast episode that's out. Is there any name that reaches out to you as a possible target for the Heat?
Well, they're active, but it's a situation where they're in this weird spot where the expiring contracts that they thought were going to be essentially just throw-ins into deals in order to bring back a high-salary player, the players are actually ending up being vital rotation players like Iguodala and Olynyk. And so it's complicating matters because, although some of the names that we toss around, yes, like Oladipo for Olynyk, for instance, I'm just throwing those 2 names out there. There's no question Oladipo is the sexier name, but can you really afford to trade for a high salary player now? And how do you make up for that? So I think that's what's kind of hurting the Heat right now is they're trying to figure out packages that aren't going to completely strip the team of all the depth that they have. So kind of the guys that I'm looking at are some of the big men out there. I think that they're going to look at some of the stretch 4s. Harrison, I think the buyout market may be a bigger thing. And it's been really quiet, and I think that that's indicative of
Greg, you there?
Did I lose you guys?
You got muted for a second. You're good now.
Oh, so yeah, man. I mean, it's tough to completely hone in on exactly who they're targeting because they're very secretive. But I think the usual suspects that you guys have heard in the media, the Spencer Dinwiddie stuff, I do not understand that at all. I think that's I heard that they went as far as to check his medicals, and from my perspective, I just don't understand why that would make any sense for this year. I think Boogie Cousins is still on the radar. I think Harrison Barnes is an interesting option, but ultimately I just don't know that they're going to sacrifice flexibility going forward. Oladipo is still, obviously a name.
Greg? That's weird.
Just to kind of... No, go ahead. I was just going to say,
go right ahead.
Kind of to go off of that, that's definitely what I kind of expected at this point. I just kind of wanted to bring up, the dilemma for this offseason and how that might play into the deadline, Greg. So, obviously, kind of the elephant in the room is kind of the Duncan Robinson dilemma where, Joe Harris he just got a 4-year, $75 million contract. And obviously Duncan isn't producing like he did last year, but you'd have to imagine he's going to try to command similar money.
Sure.
And if he gets too much less than Joe Harris, I mean, his agent, should be held liable, because that's, Duncan Robinson is that level of player in the long term for sure. So that's why I really kind of wanted to see us, make a bigger move now. Obviously with the way the cap works, if we were to make a move now, we'd be able to sign Duncan over the cap, but once we sign him, it kind of limits the moves we're going to be able to make. Obviously, I know Riley's big, grand scheme in the past, and even as recent as this past off season, has been to bring in a whale. And I think now, I guess my question to you, Greg, is: do you think that the whale dream is kind of over, or do you think maybe Riley's just planning something bigger in the long term? And I only ask that because I think you tweeted it yesterday. We're at the point now where if we don't really make a big move, we're pretty much locking ourselves into this core long term.
Greg, you're there?
Yeah, no, you make a great point. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I think you're onto something. I don't think Riley has some master plan where he's has some other superstar up his sleeve that he's waiting for. I think that obviously me being the Riley guy and the hope trafficker, like maybe somebody would expect that that's the route that I would go. And I think that the flexibility that Miami gained by trading Justice Winslow with JJ and Dion for Iggy and Jay Crowder, that flexibility was always time sensitive. It was based on last offseason, which was a complete flop. And then it was based on what you were going to do with the flex in 2021. And so I think that there's been a couple curveballs that the front office maybe didn't anticipate. I think it's a good problem to have that Bam is good enough to command a max extension. I don't think anybody should get on that dude for taking that max extension. He was worth every penny. And I know the fan base was a little split on the timing of it, but the fact that he's good enough to get that is a good problem to have. But now we have at this spot, and you just hit on it, man. Contract. Are you really going to pay Duncan Robinson the way you paid JJ? And they've been reluctant to do that. And I just think that they're faced with a really tough call. Because Duncan Robinson's skill set is so elite. But at some point, you got to ask yourself, if you don't have
Greg, you're there? Okay. Yeah, it looks like the audio keeps cutting in and off. Keep going.
Creator on the roster other than Jimmy, and Bam is developing, but unless you get more shot creators.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I just want to expand on that. I think that they really, really have to consider not only what Duncan is going to get, but I'm pretty certain that a guy like Nunn can get a decent size offer. I wouldn't be surprised if the Knicks came in and said, "Hey, Kendrick Nunn, do you want between $13 and $15 million?" Right? So it's not just paying one of. It's not just the Duncan contract or the Nunn contract. I kind of look at them combined. And if you're paying essentially a max contract for the both of them, that is going to screw your flexibility going forward. I know that they would have the same cap hold throughout this next season, but then that following off season, those cap holds, I believe, are going to be the value that you paid them, right? Which means that you can't really do much unless you're going to move them anyway. So I feel like it would make sense to just move them the year before when they have peak value. I honestly think that you can. I honestly feel like when you look at a guy like Duncan, right? Obviously, he has an elite skill set, but it also has to, be taken into consideration that you can find a guy like JJ Redick or Wayne Ellington to replace that skill set. And it might not be exactly the same, but if you can get those guys for a fraction of the price and they can replace 80% of that production, I think that you have to consider seriously moving Duncan. And with a guy like Kendrick Nunn, he's basically he's essentially just a scoring guard, which there's a million of in today's NBA. So I really, really think that, you know, you have to consider, can you get a facsimile of these guys for a fraction of the price, move a Duncan Robinson or a Kendrick Nunn, or even, you know, like Greg mentioned, you know, you have these rotation guys that you don't necessarily want to move. But I think you even have to look at a KO, who Jimmy loves and who I don't expect to move because of, you know, Jimmy's respect for him. But I think you have to say, like, can we move KO and bring in a Bielitsa and essentially be fine? Personally, I think the answer is yes. I don't know their feelings on it. I have no inside information. But I think that those things have to be a serious consideration is, you know, again, can we move these dudes and find cheaper, similar production somewhere else?
Yeah. You know what? Like, the Heat have struggled.
Oh, Greg?
This actually, if you really think about it, am I cutting out on you guys?
Yeah. But I think I got. Did you say that they've been struggling without KO?
No, that they've been struggling with this exact thing in terms of, like, when do you trade a guy and when do you keep a guy? You know what I mean? And, like, selling high has not been a strength of the franchise. And but when you're trying to win, it's very difficult to know the moment when you're actually selling highest and when that makes sense. And there's not a lot of teams actually that really do it and exemplify what I think the fan base want the team to do, because it's not an easy thing to evaluate.
Yeah, I would agree with that as of late, but, you know, I'm looking at, you know, I'm 24 years old. My entire life has been filled with moments where Pat Riley sold guys at the right time. Going even back to when I was a little kid and the Glenn Rice trade and being able to acquire Zoe. Yeah, Glenn Rice was a really, really good player, and his best basketball was actually after he left, you know, the Heat for the most part. But, you know, we brought in Zoe, and then, you know, a few years later, you know, we get D Wade. We have a nice young core, and Riley says, you know what, we need to bring in a star to complement D Wade. And a lot of people at the time were a little bit skeptical of us trading Caron Butler and Lamar Odom, and obviously, you know, Grant and picks. But, you know, those two players, Butler and Odom, for good reason, were exuding potential. They were hot assets, and we traded both of them in a deal that ultimately brought, I believe, a 32-year-old big man at the time over here. And yeah, Shaq was still producing, but there were people that, you know, were looking long-term and thought that this young core with Wade, Butler, and Odom, that could have dominated for a long time. And obviously, looking back, you know, that was a no-brainer move. And, you know, I don't know if we win anything with that young core that we had at the time. So for me, it's a little troubling that now is, you know, we're starting to see this trend that's kind of in reverse, where we're holding guys when in reality selling them high would be the ultimate move. You know, just looking at the Harden opportunity, I'm not in the details like you are, Greg. But my knowledge was that we would have been able to acquire Harden without giving up Jimmy and Bam. And to me, that's, you know, that would be the most Pat Riley move ever. So it's kind of upsetting he didn't make it, but I know that, you know, his grand scheme in whatever he has planned is going to be good. I just hope that we end up getting someone to bring in to complement Jimmy and Bam.
So I do want to just jump in with the Glenn Rice and the Shaq thing, because a lot of people bring those trades up. I think the Glenn Rice thing, I don't know, I'm 23. I don't even know if I was alive when Zoe originally got traded, but we're talking about things like decades ago.
Yeah, the league was different. The salary cap was different. Listen, I cried when Glenn Rice got traded for Alonzo Mourning, and I ain't even lying to y'all. Like, literally, I shed tears. I was so upset. I hated Pat Riley because he traded Glenn Rice. Glenn Rice was my favorite player, and I learned quickly to start trusting the dude. But, like, there's a misconception out here, and this is information that Ethan Skolnick and I received directly from the Heat front office, is that they could not have acquired James package that they were willing to give, because the package, really the name of the game for Houston in that trade.
Oh, Greg, can you say that one more time real quick? I think the audio cut off a little bit. That last sentence.
The Heat did not have enough draft capital to make that package work for Houston, and that's why they ultimately went with the other package that had more pick swaps, more first round picks and whatnot. We received from a really high ranking Heat official that like if they could have made the James Harden trade, they would have made that trade. And so I think that just needs to be clarified and broadcasted as loud as possible. I just don't think there's another Shaq trade to be made at the moment. I think that they are absolutely willing to go all in on the Bradley Beals of the world. And if any other superstar becomes available that Jimmy would vibe with, then I think that they're still that card and stuff is way overblown.
Mm-hmm. And then, moving forward, that's a lot of great points you brought up on Greg. So, like, real quick, I want to ask you a question that one of the fans wanted to ask. So one person wants to ask, what's more of a priority at the deadline? An upgrade at the 4 or an upgrade at the guard?
From everything I've heard, it's an upgrade at the 4, although it may look at Ariza as a guy who can plug and play at that spot, and maybe they'll pivot to the court, but the backcourt's crowded enough, so I'm going to stick to what I've consistently heard, and that was they're looking for a stretch big next to him.
Mm-hmm. And then another person wants to ask is, how willing are we to get rid of our assets to win right now?
Like I said, if there's a Bradley Beal to be had, they're going to make the trade. If there's another another superstar that becomes available,
Greg, you're breaking up right now.
The the draft pick scenario, it's another conversation we can have, and I'm sure Brian will have some strong.
Greg?
Can you guys hear me? Man, my internet looks like it's completely fine.
When your thing pops up and says that your bandwidth is low.
I mean, I don't even know how to fix that.
I do want to say one thing off that comment, Greg. So, for me, I look at this team as not. I don't really necessarily think we need a whale. I don't think we need. Yeah, of course, if we could get Zach LaVine, Bradley Beal, I mean, we're instant, finals favorites in my opinion. But for me at this point, I would not mind if we cashed in not all of our assets, but a good amount of them, and got a guy like John Collins, got a guy like Vooch. And honestly, right now, I'm not sure if we do have the assets for those guys because I'm sure they're commanding a lot. But I'm thinking if we were to get either one of those guys that stretch the floor and, can create offense at will, that changes the whole face of the team. And guys like Bam, although he can score at a very efficient, very high rate, wouldn't really feel the pressure to go out there and take a bunch of shots. And he'd probably, if we had Vucevic or Collins, I could see him shooting like 65, 70% from the field, and he would be eating. And I think, something like that could really make us a whole new team. And I know we've been linked to them a little bit, but is there any traction whatsoever with guys of that kind? Or do you think, we're just really trying to reserve these kind of moves for like later, maybe next off season?
The Heat love Vooch.
Greg?
Question about that. They might breaking up again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me clearly now?
Yes.
Now, yeah.
Man, whoever has to
We keep losing, man.
that's a mess. But I don't think that they have enough draft picks to get that done. Like Orlando would need a package that is just through the moon, and I just don't think Miami's going to go there. John Collins is an interesting scenario because he's on the same kind of like Duncan Robinson rookie contract kind of situation. So maybe could there be a swap there? What do you guys think about a Duncan Robinson, John Collins type swap?
I mean, I'd be fine with it. What about you guys?
I love it.
I love me some Duncan. I love me some Duncan Robinson, and I'll be sad, obviously, because I've been the biggest Duncan Robinson fan and apologist on Twitter, probably. But for John Collins, yeah, you take a swing at it. You can get another shooter somewhere, even on your own roster. You have Max Strus, maybe give him an elevated role. So I'd be okay with it.
I'd be a lot more comfortable paying John Collins long-term, big money, given his age and his ceiling, I'd be a lot more comfortable paying him that money than Duncan at this point, so I'd be cool.
But you're also paying John Collins a lot more than you're paying Duncan Robinson, right?
Yeah, you're probably paying him $100 million.
It's a good amount more. Yeah.
You're talking about near max money.
Yeah, definitely. I still would pay it. I like him a lot. I think he'd be a really good fit here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. I feel like Miami runs on Duncan. We all know that. But it's just the stats that, like, he's been putting up recently aren't really helping the team. Of course, like, they help contribute something to the team. I mean, every player has something to contribute. But I feel like with his inconsistent stats, considering how well he played last season and the stats he put up last season within 3-point percentages, rebounds, points, etc., I feel like John Collins would be a great, like, not replacement, well, yeah, replacement, but even if we weren't to get someone like John Collins, we would always have Max Strus as a backup. He's not as good yet, but he's getting up there. So it's not like we'd be left in the dust with no good 3-point shooters on our team. So,
I mean, John Collins right now is shooting 37.5% from three, and last year he shot 40%. So, I mean, that's nothing to sneeze
Even
at.
on limited attempts, he still can hit him, and you could trade for maybe like a Wayne Ellington. You know what I mean? To like replace some of what Duncan would, what you'd lose in Duncan shooting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's been reports that the Pelicans want to buy out JJ Redick. So I mean, you trade for John Collins and then get JJ Redick, and I think you're totally fine with shooting. He is going to be expensive. Let's just say 100 for 4 years. That comes out to about 25 per. But let's say that Duncan is going to get his 20. You're only talking about paying $5 million more per year for John Collins than Duncan Robinson, and I think that's a no-brainer swap.
Right, but the question here is, if you get John Collins, you sign him to that near max money, and basically the Heat are done with big moves after that, and you got to be okay with the core of Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and John Collins.
You're right.
The question is, if the Heat is okay with that, and us as fans, are we okay with that?
No, fans aren't okay with it.
Yeah.
I can already tell you that right now. They want more stars, more.
Right, because that's it. You get John Collins, and that's pretty much it.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, and that's the big thing, right? It's like, do we want to lock ourselves into that big three? But I mean, like I mentioned earlier, I think that they would already lock themselves into a roster if it's like Bam, Jimmy, D-Rob, and none. I think that hypothetically, John Collins is easier to move if you need to make, room. Whether it's, in free agency, or let's say some star becomes available and you need to trade someone, either to match salary or because, like let's just say the Washington Wizards are going to move Bradley Beal and they're like, hey, what do you have to offer? I think it's a pretty damn good thing to walk in there and say, we have John Collins we can give you plus other stuff. So I think that kind of is also where his value lies. But again, yeah, it's a lot of money, and I don't know that a trio of Jimmy, Bam, and John Collins would, compete with the best in the NBA. They'd be really good, though. That's for damn sure. They'd be better than they are now.
Yeah, here's another name that I've been screaming to high heavens for the last 2 podcasts. Is
let me scream it with
just make the move for Victor Oladipo. I personally, like I've said this, I don't have any insight, obviously. It's a speculation on my end. Maybe Pat is usually that guy that makes a move at the deadline instead of a week or 2 before. So he's just looking at the entire landscape of the NBA before going for a Victor Oladipo trade. We know Victor Oladipo wants to be in Miami. We know that for a fact, with the way he's been talking and acting and all the sources from Oladipo's side. And one thing I wanted to actually ask you about this, Greg, we know Oladipo to Miami interest, but how is it for Miami the other way around? How does the front office feel about Oladipo?
So last year, Miami, the front office, I felt, was puffing their chest out a little bit, and Oladipo was like plan C. And I think if you ask them now, it would be a little bit different. I actually, my gut feeling is they actually trade for Oladipo by the deadline. I think that they have incentive to do that because they can't really rely on sign and trades this summer, because if they sign and trade, they immediately are hard capped, and then they won't be able to retain Duncan Robinson and Kendrick Nunn even as their own free agents because they can't go over that hard cap. So I think there's incentive for them to trade for Oladipo now, and I think that is something that if I had to predict, if I had to put my money somewhere, I think Oladipo ends up in Miami by the line.
Right. So Oladipo, I think he probably, people have been saying that, and it's just been weird to me how Kendrick Nunn, when he was on his high, they were like, oh, he's just as good as Oladipo, or just maybe a notch lower, but he's cheaper and all that, and he stays healthy. But there's a massive, massive, massive gap between Kendrick Nunn and Victor Oladipo, in my opinion. And I don't understand people that would rather keep Kendrick Nunn and Kelly Olynyk if it comes down to it, because Oladipo is automatically the best defensive guard on the team, in my opinion. So there's just no comparison there, and I don't see why people do that on Twitter.
I think Jimmy would rather have Kyle Lowry, though.
I think I'd rather have Kyle Lowry.
I know they have a good friendship, right?
They do, and from all indications, like last year during the playoffs, we were talking pretty closely with some of Jimmy's close confidants, and they talked a lot about how Lowry and Drew Holiday were like Jimmy's dudes, and Oladipo was not one of those dudes. But obviously that's it's hearsay for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the sound of bringing in Kyle Lowry, and he'd probably be our starting one, and then having guards of him and Dragic, and honestly, Dragic and him could definitely play together. Goran has had plenty of experience playing off the ball at a high level, but I just think that would be a perfect fit. Someone that comes in, really on all sides, in all areas, is an improvement over Nunn. I like Kendrick Nunn, and I think that a lot of fans give him a really hard time for he's actually a damn good player, albeit a bit inconsistent. But I do think that, based on what everyone's been saying, and I fully agree with the sentiment that the time to make a deal that would include a guy like Kendrick Nunn is now. I would agree that I would rather see Lowry over Oladipo, mainly just because of, Oladipo scares me. He's shooting, I think, a little bit below 40% in his games with Houston. And I think that would definitely improve because I think he's just shooting at will there. And, he'd come here and get better looks at a lower, he would shoot less. So obviously by nature, his percentage would go up. But I don't know. The injuries just really, really bother me from him. He's certainly not going to be an all-star, at least in my opinion again. I don't know if he has the burst or, the durability to be at that level. If we got him, I'm certainly going to be happy, and I certainly will expect more from this team with him. But I'm even though he's already 35, I would rather see Lowry for sure.
Right, but Oladipo, he has to do and take all these shots and exert all this energy in Houston. In Miami, he can play off Jimmy and Bam, and I think that's better for him health-wise too, because he doesn't have to exert himself as much, in my opinion. And personally, if I had to make a prediction, or maybe just the move that I would like to see is sign Victor Oladipo and explore the buyout market for LaMarcus Aldridge, get those two in, and I think that he have a chance to at least give these top teams in the East a fight. I'm not going to say they're going to beat them, but at least giving them a fight.
Yeah, personally, I think that Lowry is a better player than Oladipo. I think Oladipo has a higher ceiling, though. I know that he's struggling in Houston, but everyone knows he doesn't want to be there. Everyone knows he doesn't want to be in Indiana. I honestly think that there's just going to be improvement because of intrinsic motivation in a place that he's been trying to play for years. I honestly think we could see the best version of Victor Oladipo, like we have for many players in Miami. So
I can't believe Brian's talking about intangibles right now. Wow.
No. See, all right. So the thing is, I'm realistic with my takes. I'm not a homer, so when I say stuff, I'm coming from a realistic point of view. And sometimes that sounds, not not great, like I'm not taking things like intangibles into account, but sports are ultimately a human endeavor, right? So intangibles are a huge factor in this. Like any job, if you don't want to be there, your performance is going to suffer. We've all been there just in life.
I didn't know you had it in you.
But thank you, I appreciate it.
but Kyle Lowry would cost a lot more than Victor Oladipo, right?
Yeah, he would absolutely. Granted, I think that the Raptors would do right by him, and if he wanted to be in Miami, I think the price is different versus like if he was just asking out regularly, or if they were just approaching it as if he was just another target. But yeah, I think that Kyle Lowry, just by virtue of being a better player now, would cost more money.
Right.
Well, also, Oladipo's not re-signing there, so the clock is ticking, and everyone knows. He's got 2 more months as a Rocket regardless, so I don't think his price is very high.
Windhorst said on his podcast, 2 second-round picks may end up being the final cost, and it's like at that point, just trade for the man and let's see what happens.
It's just basically filler in the seconds, right?
Yeah, essentially, match salary, which that's what I meant when I spoke at the beginning of the podcast about what's become a dilemma for the Heat, is that like the salary matchers are rotation players, and they didn't expect that. They truthfully thought that a lot of these big salary guys, Iguodala even, they thought was just going to be a throw-in, and now he's obviously a contributor.
So who are you sending out, Greg, for Oladipo if you had to pick?
If you say KZ Okpala, we're going to have problems, Greg. You know this.
Yeah, no, KZ is in the deal. Houston likes KZ, and the Heat could have got PJ Tucker if they were willing to put KZ in the deal, but they got Trevor Ariza much cheaper. I'm thinking, so what do we got to get to? We got to get to 19 million or so, maybe even less than that.
20? I thought it was 21.
Yeah, I think, but you only have to come within a certain percentage of the salary to get there. So it may be less than 19, actually. I'm thinking something in the neighborhood of like Iguodala, Nunn, and picks. And I don't know what picks means, but like some draft compensation, and then see if anybody's offering anything better. I'll pose this question to the group. Not worst case scenario, but let's just say you had to put Duncan in the deal to get Oladipo. Do you do that?
No.
I wouldn't.
No.
You know what though? No. I wouldn't. At face value, I wouldn't. But if you're talking, at that point, if JJ Redick gets bought out, I mean, if you've ever listened to Old Man and the 3 Pod, which, by the way, listeners, if you hadn't, that is a great podcast. He loves the Miami Heat. I really think Jimmy he would Butler. Come here. Loves Jimmy. He loves all of the players in the Heat. So I think if we could trade Duncan for him and maybe add filler, and that's all it takes to get Oladipo, and we can save some picks, and then we were to be able to get JJ Redick, I don't hate it.
Okay, but if you trade Duncan without locking him in, without locking Oladipo in long term, you're trading Duncan Robinson for a rental for 2 months to see what happens.
Well, yeah, but Duncan, I mean, I think you'd have to – obviously, Oladipo wants to be in Miami, so there'd be an understanding.
They could do like an Iguodala situation maybe, where trade for him and sign an extension.
Hey, when they traded Glenn Rice for Zoe, they didn't have any commitment from Alonzo Mourning. He was going to be a free agent, and they kept him. And Shaq also was going to be an impending free agent when they emptied the clip for him too. And Goran Dragic as well was also going to be a free agent. So Riley, and I know we always say Riley's doing all these deals. Just to clarify, Andy's doing all the work, just so you guys know. Like Pat's chilling and Pat's signing off on stuff, but Andy is the man who's doing all the work.
Yeah, Ellisberg's a hero. He's one of the most unsung heroes in probably all of the NBA.
For real. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know about throwing in Duncan. Duncan and Nunn sounds kind of a steep price.
I just think if you wait long enough, you're not going to have to kill Duncan. Houston's going to figure out really quick that they're not going to get what they want for Oladipo.
I was going to say, I think if it came down to it, last minute of the trade deadline, and they had to do it, I guess I would, if there was nothing else I could get for both Duncan and Nunn, and then I just look at the buyout market and see if I can replace him. But I would be fighting very, very hard to keep Duncan out of that deal.
Greg, you mentioned Iguodala as a part of the trade. You put Iguodala before you put in Kelly?
I think so, just because right now, like the spot next to Bam is so in flux that I don't think you can further fracture what you got going on up there. It is not working out. The Jay Crowder replacement thing is been a mess. It was a complete miss in the offseason. And
Greg, you there?
so you can't also exit Kelly out of the.
It's just a bigger hole to fill. I think, we have now Ariza can more easily fill Iguodala's role than he can Kelly's. And I said this in the last pod, but we would need someone to go next to Bam. We don't have the depth. I can't trust Chris Silva. And it's sorry to say, at times, I can't trust Achua in big moments. So at least, I think Precious is getting there. But right now, Kelly, I think, serves a bigger role. And if we were to get rid of Iggy, it's almost a little bit more replaceable for us.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think Precious ultimately is going to end up in a package at some point. They're going to see that he can't fit next to Bam, and at some point, like, you can cash him in for a starter that will be able to.
I wouldn't be surprised, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like the first time they kind of missed on a pick in a while.
Yeah, I mean, he may be a good player, but to Brian's point, does he fit next to Bam? That's the question. And I feel like if you were going to go with a big in the first round and keep the pick and not trade down and not do anything else, and you're going to go with a big, pick one that you know is going to fit next to Bam. And maybe, like, with his development he will, but so far we haven't seen it.
I think a big motive in picking him was Pat was looking at maybe some of the holes in the team, and he was thinking, okay, when Bam's off the floor, I want a guy that can switch. I want a guy that can do pick and rolls and keep that athleticism up. And he's similar to Bam. I mean, that comparison's undeniable. But as you guys said, long term, we didn't draft a guy to be a starter on this team. I think we drafted him for the short term need of another energy guy off the bench. I don't think we missed on the pick. I think that there might have been a better fit at that pick, but I still think his value will be there. And I think that, the hype of him still becoming a Bam-esque type player still will be there. But I do agree with the thought that he will likely end up in a package.
And then again, like, even with trade deadlines coming up, like, if we were to pick up a new player, like, let's say we do pick up Oladipo, maybe Achua will play great next to him. You never know. Like, it just takes a trade or to go to another team for a player to really gel well, better with the players on that team, maybe better than their last, because they can learn a lot of different techniques and strategies that maybe they couldn't unleash with their other team, and they really play to their full potential and play their best basketball. Like, Jimmy, he's playing his best basketball on the Heat rather than he was with the Bulls or the Sixers, so.
Even Jay Crowder, like, we felt like he was a throw-in, and to your point, like, he was maximized in Miami. So all it takes is one trade. You're really right about that.
Exactly. Thank you.
So then, with that being said, it's almost time to close it out. But before we do, it's time to play the game that we played last pod. And that's none other than Grade That Trade. So to those who are tuning in for the first time, if you don't know how this works, we asked Heat Twitter to give us some trade ideas. Some of them are really wild to look at. Some of them seem pretty good. But now we're going to ask our judges here to grade these trades, and we'll see if it's something that Pat Riley should even consider doing. So without further ado, let's look at the first trade idea someone brought up. So this isn't actually a player I think we talked about, but still, why not? So this is Heat Raptors. It's not Kyle Lowry, but you have the Miami Heat acquiring Norman Powell, and in exchange for that, Miami gives to Toronto Avery Bradley, Mo Harkless, and Kendrick Nunn, and a 2025 first-round pick. What do we grade that?
That's an F. No
way. We got to. You'd have to pay Norman Powell, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like not any of y'all. Y'all didn't propose this trade, but isn't he up for a contract this summer?
I believe so.
I think
Let
so.
me see. It says
so.
Here,
It's like.
Yeah,
so you'd have to ask yourself.
Yeah. He says here. He has,
do you want your big three, the third
guy to be Norman Powell?
I have a feeling that trade's a joke, but at the same time, it's probably not.
Come on, dude. This guy has to be trolling.
I don't care about any of those players, honestly, especially Kendrick Nunn. He could go for a bag of chips. But I'm not giving up a first for Norman Powell. They can find a Norman Powell in the G League.
Hear me out. They cannot find I don't like the trade. I think it's too much. Before you said the first, I actually like the trade, but the first I think pushes me over the edge. Let's not forget, Norman Powell is the most slept-on player in the league. I'm a big fan of his. So first off, he's almost at 20 points a game. He's shooting. This is not an exaggeration. 45% from three off of 6.5 attempts. This man is really, really good. Do I want him to be in a big three? No, I definitely don't. But I wouldn't sneeze at Norman Powell. If we acquired him, I would absolutely love it. That package is.
Yeah, you have to acquire him if you're planning just for this season, but because then you have to pay him. And no, thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking at his numbers. I take it back. He's actually really
fire.
Good. Yeah,
he's fire and a great defender. So I'm taking him, but it's a lot to.
Great this year, but are we worried about contract year?
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%.
I know it's a contract year for him.
Yeah, he's 27, so
I give it a D- F just for that. He's not worth a first round pick. But Mo Harkless, he can go. Avery Bradley, he's been injured for 2 months. But anyway.
So we got D- from Angelina. What are the other grades?
F-. I give him a 0, actually. A 0. Incomplete.
Just throw the whole trade away.
I give it a C. I give it a C.
Just hand him the paper and make him redo it.
All right, so we handed that trade back to this dude.
Yeah.
I won't say the name, but yeah. So
unless it gets an A from all of us, then we can give him a shout out.
So anyways, next trade. We have the Heat trading with the Orlando Magic. We got the Heat acquiring Nikola Vucevic, and in return, Miami gives Orlando Iguodala, Olynyk, Hero, and a first-round pick.
B+.
That's a tough one.
Man, that's a difficult one. But I'm going to go B.
I mean, you're trading an all-star for Olynyk, Iguodala, and Hero. Iguodala's on his way out anyways. Olynyk's contract's expiring. And Hero,
we don't know what Tyler Hero's value is right now because of just how bad he's been doing.
In my opinion, he I don't want to say peaked because he has not peaked whatsoever, but he got recognized too quickly, and his reputation spiked too quickly, and people now expect so much from him, and they expect him to do all these great things. They think he's like Jordan in his prime in his rookie year. No, that's not how it works. He has a lot more to improve on and build on, but people think he's the be-all, end-all for a team. I will never forgive the people that didn't want to give up him and Robinson for Harden. That will haunt me forever in my nightmares. I swear to God. But
either way, it wasn't getting it done. But yeah, the people that wanted that didn't want to do that, yeah, they have a special place somewhere for them.
Yeah, exactly.
For the Heat, I feel like that's a move that they make. I don't know if it's a move that the Magic would make. That seems like not very much. Tyler Hero obviously is the perception.
It depends how much they value him, right?
Yeah, the perception I think from the fans is ahead of the player right now. But don't make any mistake. Tyler Hero is a damn good player with a pretty high. He's only 21. He has a lot of time to grow and get better.
So young already.
Yeah.
With all he's done at his age, it's crazy. Not many. LaMelo Ball, but I was gonna say not many people can say that they've done that. But
yeah, I just feel like the Magic would need more to give up Vooch. Given how good he is, and given the fact that
they're going to be able to.
You got out, Greg.
Sorry, did I lose you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My bad. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say, I think the Magic, if they trade Vucevic, they're going to want a package that they can go brag around the league about, and I don't think that package has enough draft picks to brag about.
Absolutely. Plus, you have to consider that draft pick is going to be worthless if the Heat have Vooch. Jimmy, Bam, and Vooch is going to be a damn good team, and that pick is going to be somewhere in the 20s, and it's just not going to be all that. So. Mm-hmm.
And do you want to trade Vucevic to your in-state rival?
Also, that's another thing.
Yeah,
you don't want to see that guy 4 times a year.
Yeah.
I give it an A though because I love it.
It's great for the Heat.
It's really good for Miami.
Yeah, they would do that yesterday if it was on the table.
Not realistic though. I agree.
Yeah.
All right. So then, let's look into this next one. I personally don't know how to feel
Can you believe they almost had him with the big three?
Did they?
Would have been nuts.
Oh, that's right. I heard something about that. I don't know the specific details, but I heard that they almost did.
It might have been enough to keep LeBron. He'd be like, "Oh man, I got Chris Bosh and Vooch in the front court. That's pretty nice."
On a rookie contract, too, it was going to be so perfect. And then at the last minute, it fell apart. Anyway, I digress.
But, yeah, let's not think about that one. So this next trade, I don't know how to feel about this one. You have Miami, so they also allow you to sign players in this as well. So they have Miami acquiring DeMar DeRozan and Trey Jones while signing LaMarcus Aldridge via buyout. And then in return, San Antonio gets Iguodala, Olynyk, Robinson, Achua, a second-round pick in 2022, and a first-rounder.
I don't think San Antonio would. I don't know if they would trade DeMar for just D-Rob and a couple of second-round picks. Is he a free agent at the end of this year, or is that next year?
He is.
This year, right?
This year. Oh.
He's an expiring.
He's probably going to walk. Yeah, that's what makes it interesting. Is that I don't know if. Yeah.
Wow. But anyway, what do we want
hard.
to grade this trade?
That's hard. It's good, but it's like, do you risk all of that for those players? I mean, DeMar DeRozan, LaMarcus Aldridge. LaMarcus Aldridge is already in the conversation with us, though.
I give it a B- out of my loyalty for Duncan Robinson.
Yeah, if you're Miami, I think you do that trade. I just don't know. I don't know what DeMar's value is. I feel like he could get more through trade. I just don't know. But
San Antonio also has to pay Duncan Robinson. You got to think about that.
They also do have to pay Duncan Robinson. I don't know that they would want to pay Duncan Robinson because Clutch has mentioned this before. Clutch Adam, what's Duncan Robinson doing on the Spurs?
Yeah, he's got to go to a contender.
Right.
And he's got to go to a team where he can play all stars.
Yeah, so I just don't know what the real value is outside of the picks, and I feel like you could probably get better picks if you're the Spurs for DeMar. So, yeah, I guess from the Heat perspective, I'd probably give it like a B to an A.
I'll give it a B range, like B minus, B plus, like maybe like an 85. I'll put it.
Yeah, like I said, I just wouldn't expect the Spurs to seriously consider that trade.
Most of these trades are unrealistic, but it's just fun and funny, I guess. Like most of them are just like the universe would have to freaking end. So,
no Lonzo Ball trades?
Yeah, Lonzo Ball is Lonzo, but we should be talking about him. Listen, that dude is balling. He would be so perfect. Like I don't know why.
Loves him.
Yeah.
Well, then Pat should trade for him. Listen, that
lame.
dude's he's gonna be out anyway. Like, do a Nunn and D-Rob for Lonzo and JJ Redick move. We're good.
Oh, I have not heard that one yet.
Aren't the Clippers heavily trying to pursue Lonzo?
Yeah,
They don't
they
have
nothing
anything.
for him.
Yeah.
But they don't have anything. They want him, but they don't have anything.
No
It's a dark horse move, Brian, which you just mentioned, that Lonzo Ball, JJ Redick stuff. That's a dark horse move. Seriously.
I hope so, because I feel like that just makes sense. Like, you're going to have to pay Lonzo at the end of the year, sure, but you have to pay Duncan Robinson and Kendrick Nunn, too. So it's not like – plus, Lonzo Ball, one, would be maximizing Miami. Two, would help to maximize Bam. Could you imagine the amount of lobs that he would be throwing? Like, that would be fun as hell to watch. Three, like, he's another guy where going forward, if you need to move the money, he's young enough and talented enough that a team is going to want it. I know that they're interested in Lonzo when – he was coming up. They didn't have the position to get him in the draft, obviously, but I am so high on Lonzo, man, and he could shoot. Like, what is there to not like?
Yeah. Oh my God. People are stuck in the past, and his expectations were so high, and he didn't reach them at first. But we're talking about a brand new player this year. I think he adjusted his shot mechanics a little bit in the offseason, and a little bit last year. He was looking better too. But right now, he's shooting 39% from three, which is what Duncan Robinson's shooting, by the way. And he's on 8 attempts a game. So his shooting is definitely there. And he's a guy that can switch 1 to 3, maybe 1 to 4, depending on the guy. That's a guy you want playing big minutes in the playoffs. I think he's 6'6". He's a tank. And I think that on all levels, and of course his elite vision, it changes the course of our team. I think that would be a move that I'm not really sure what they're looking for. Obviously, he's expiring, so maybe his value is a little lower. I would for sure do that move, and I would, I love the sound of bringing in JJ Redick as well. I'm always high on him, so I like that. I would give that trade an A, Brian.
Plus, the only negative is we have to bring in LeVar.
That is true. But I was going to say, with the amount of switching that the Heat do, a lot of times one of our guards will get switched onto a bigger guy in the post. I'm a lot more comfortable with 6'6" Lonzo getting switched onto a big than I am with any of our current guards. So I think that, obviously while that matchup still isn't ideal, I think it becomes less of a problem going forward than it is now, which I think would save a ton of possessions. And even though, again, the Heat already have a really good defense, but if you're going to double down on something, why not? Why not and still keep that shooting with a guy who makes everybody better? So I'm with that move 100%. But
yeah, you're right. I still have flashbacks of Kendrick Nunn getting switched on Nikola Vucevic.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I would just prefer Lonzo in those situations. And again, he might not, it's not like he's going to stop every big that he gets switched onto, but it's a better look than anybody else that we have.
Right.
Greg, is there any talk or any chatter or any even inkling that the Heat are interested in a guy like Lonzo?
I haven't heard anything on the trade front yet, but I just know that Riley has always had an affinity for his game, and I do know that they are aware of the fact that they're going to have to revamp the point guard spot. At some point, they can't avoid it. Like this Goran Dragic thing eventually is going to run out. He's not an $18 million player this year. He's not going to be that going forward, so they got to find a long-term replacement there. I know Jimmy and Bam handle the ball so much, so maybe they don't need a traditional point guard, but Lonzo kind of is not necessarily such a traditional point guard. I love the idea, but I have not heard his name connected to the Heat yet in the same way that we've heard JJ Redick via buyout. The name I hear most is Rudy Gay, and I don't know how much it moves the needle for me, but that's the name I continue to hear most.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sure we're going to hear a lot of stuff in the next 5 days.
Definitely.
Yes, and I'll get yelled at because everyone will say I'm lying when I'm just tweeting what I'm told.
But recently, I'm sorry to go back to the Oladipo thing. Have you heard recently Heat interest in Oladipo?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Could always use
100%.
more Nigerians. I think he's from Nigeria.
It also has to do with cost. Like, they're really looking for deals. Like, they may have liked P.J. Tucker more than Trevor Ariza, but the fact that they didn't have to offer KZ in that deal, and basically they sent a pick that they may never convey, that's why they went with Ariza over P.J. Tucker. Like, they're looking for deals that are low cost, and Oladipo is going to be one of those.
Ideally, Pat wants to pull a heist on Houston for Oladipo. Ideally.
Houston needs to relax, though. The things I'm seeing.
I know. Is it true? Is it really true that they asked for Duncan Robinson for PJ Tucker?
I don't think so. That's all posturing. That's agents that leak shit, and other teams.
I saw Duncan Robinson or Tyler Hero.
Yeah, that was never a thing.
I mean, I'm seeing they want James Wiseman. They want Wiseman from the Warriors, and that doesn't make any. Or like the Minnesota pick, like that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, come on, like that's the kind of stuff people start to stockpile for the Bradley Beals of the world, not like Oladipo on an expiring.
This is them realizing that they probably didn't get as much as they should have for Harden, right, and they want to make up. That's probably what it is.
Yeah, and I think now they're realizing they should have kept Karis LeVert and not ended up making the 3-team deal and getting, Oladipo. I think their thought was he would have a great year. They'd be able to move him for a lot more than LeVert, but I'm taking LeVert at this point. If you're looking for trade value, I'm taking LeVert over Oladipo by far.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah, I like Karis LeVert a lot too.
I still don't understand why Houston went ahead and they traded for Oladipo. Like, I mean, they literally got Jarrett Allen and Karis LeVert, and then they traded both away like that. I personally didn't get it.
I could be mistaken, but the Jarrett Allen move it wasn't possible to bring them both in. I don't know why I think that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. And the Oladipo thing is I think that they thought they were going to flip him, and I just don't think that the marketplace is there. It's a seller's market, and that just.
Greg, you there?
Oh, sorry.
All right.
Yeah, I said what I said, and then I just muted myself. Sorry if you missed it.
I gotcha.
So then, moving forward, I feel like we hit on a lot. Is there anything else you guys feel like we should talk about?
MVP.
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 Every time. We're closing every show with Jim VP.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot to do that. Thank you, Jake.
Yeah, I'm a fan of like everything. I'm a fan of everything I see from like the 5 Reasons side of things, and you, Greg. But Ethan trying to throw rain on the party for Jim VP and trying to put Depoy in there. I don't know. Just let us have the fun, man.
I think he's just trying to go for the more realistic award because like a 4 seed is probably not going to get MVP.
Right? Yeah, I get it. I just want the fun.
Ethan always kills the fun. Boomer.
Classic.
It's your boss.
Whoa. I got a 9 to 5 too now. That's not my full-time gig.
Oh man.
But yeah, man, Jim VP propaganda. That's always going to be the main thing for this pod moving forward.
Yeah, push the narrative.
This is the start of a movement. This is the start of a movement.
Mm-hmm. And
after the trade deadline, you guys got to have me back on so we can talk about what the Heat did or did not do.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
For sure.
For sure.
They trade KZ. I will literally fly down to Florida and fight somebody. I'm not even joking.
You have been the #1 KZ fan since you were writing Dome.
Oh, shout out to Dome. Thank you for plugging that. It's a great book, everybody, if you like superhero
And I
stuff.
actually purchased it. Like
You did.
You probably thought I hated you, and I'm copping your books, Brian.
No, man, listen, we have basketball debates, but at the end of the day, it's just basketball, man. Like, I would hope nobody's hating anybody over sports takes. Like, it's you know, it's
they're
just
out
sports.
there. Trust me, they're out there.
They're out there, and those people need, like, other hobbies and interests.
They may hate me and you, actually, these days now, Brian.
Maybe. But, you know, I thank you for that shout-out. But, yeah, KZ's my guy. You know, he's a Stanford dude. What's up?
KZ kind of saves you from spending those picks on Oladipo, doesn't he?
Yeah, but KZ is a cool dude, and I would rather have KZ. He is my biggest, in theory, player because literally all the tools are there. The ball skill, the size, the length, the willingness to want to play defense, even though he's a little overzealous at times. It's just so much of it, I think, is mental. You know, he just doesn't know where to be or when to be aggressive or confident or whatever. So I think the offseason is going to be absolutely massive for him. He hasn't had a summer league yet. He's played less career minutes than Precious to this point. So he's effectively a rookie. That's kind of how I want people to look at KZ going forward, is he's effectively this well of untapped potential. And I think if he can put it all together, he's going to be a really, really solid play for the Heat. But you know,
I was out on KZ. I really was out on KZ. And then the other day, I forgot on who it was. I saw him block the living daylight outside of the center. And I was like, okay, I'm back in.
Oh, yeah. Just the move to the rim and the up and under. Like, I'm back in on KZ when he makes plays
Yeah,
like
we're
that.
back.
Oh, yeah. He has the skills. Just, you know, can he do it consistently? And that's more of the question mark. But yeah,
just
that's
to
my
touch on that. Just to touch on that, because I know we're wrapping up. So obviously, KZ is a guy that Heat have always thought really highly of. The talk obviously was if Hero wasn't on the board, KZ was our pick there, and then obviously we moved up for him. I think KZ is a guy that Heat still believe has a lot of potential, and he's just a very raw player. Like, you can tell he's got the footwork and, you know, the length to be a very plus defender in this league his whole career. So we touched on that. You know, his 3-ball is looking solid for kind of how old he is and how that wasn't really a strength of his game in college. I see that as a level of improvement. I don't know how much G League ball you guys watch. For whatever reason, I found myself watching a lot of KZ Apollo G League games last year. The man can take guys to the rim. He can that's where the mini Giannis stuff I think kind of came from. Was he was just at will taking guys his size, bigger and smaller to the rim and finishing either on a dunk or, he's kind of nice and slithery around the rim. I still really like him, and I wouldn't want us to kind of give up on him and use him as a filler in a trade. Where
you almost want to see him put his head down and go to the rim more often.
And I think he's going to. At the end of games when he's in, and it's not really a close score, I see him kind of trying to attack and impose his will. I think that when he gains a little strength and a little bit more, he gets the handle a little bit tighter. I do see him being a top finisher on the team.
There's way too many times in meaningful minutes where you see him catch the ball under the rim and he automatically doesn't even look up. He goes to pass out.
Yeah, it'll come.
Yeah, it'll come.
Hopefully.
It's just, he has to get that experience and a little stronger. He's a little skinny, so.
Yeah.
Well, who would have thought? KZ talks to end up pod.
Shout out to my boy. Shout out to Nigeria.
Shout out
to Stanford and the Bay Area and the West Coast. We call it the best coast.
KZ MVP, something like that.
KZ MVP. I like that. We're going to start that movement.
KZP.
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 KCP.
It rhymes. It's not KZMVP. It's KZP.
You're making him sound like Contavious Caldwell Pope.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
KZMIP. There we go.
Let's see.
All right, guys. I got to hop off.
All right.
Yeah.
But this was a
Before,
good pod.
Yeah, so we're going to close out soon. But one more thing. I want to ask you, Greg, one last question. Before we do head into the trade deadline. A lot of people have been coming after Pat Riley saying, oh, Pat Riley's asleep, stuff like that. All this wild stuff. Is there anything you want to tell to the certain Pat Riley haters out there?
Well, I mean, Pat Riley is asleep in the old jokes and all that stuff. Like, let's just be very clear. Pat Riley has forgotten more about basketball than everybody on this podcast and everybody who's listening to this podcast has ever known. He has forgotten more than you have ever known about basketball. So at some point, we have to also recognize that he works harder and works longer hours than everybody probably listening to this podcast. As it relates to his profession. So I just feel like at some point, like to say like he's in the nursing home sleeping, like it's funny, but like let's not take that for the gospel. These guys are operating and approaching everything with due diligence. And again, don't sleep on Andy Ellisberg. That's the dude who's making all the moves, making all the phone calls, plugging all the numbers. That's the dude. He's the glue.
Right. Literally a year ago, we made a trade for Jay Crowder and Andre Iguodala that got us over the hump to get to the finals. So I don't see all these criticisms coming from. This happened literally a year ago.
And then Jimmy with no cap space. So I agree with you.
Exactly.
It's just people just like to make fun of Riley because of the JJ Dion era, the Hassan Whiteside era that I will forever despise. So like I get it, but you know what? He's better than most GMs. Go ask a Minnesota Timberwolves fan.
That's facts.
Definitely. No. But with that being said, thank you, Greg, for hopping in for today's episode. And thank you to all those out there for tuning in today's episode of the Heat vs. the World podcast. We'll be back very soon. Let's see what the Miami Heat decides to do, what moves they decide to make, and we'll see you guys next time with a brand new episode.